Welcome to the Down Dog Athletics Podcast, a competitor's guide to mental health and mastery. My name is Paul Klingen, and I'm your host. Down Dog Athletics' mission is to make yoga and mental health more accessible to athletes. As an athlete myself at the Division I level, I didn't realize how much I was struggling with mental health until I started practicing yoga and meditation. As athletes, we're programmed to go harder, go faster, and be stronger. We're very rarely given permission to slow down, but it's that slowing down and that stillness that you find more awareness. When you find more awareness, you're able to smooth out inefficiencies, and as you smooth out those inefficiencies, you're able to go faster. I invite you to join me on this journey as I interview some of the top experts in mental health and mental performance to give you the tools and tricks necessary to manage your mental health and improve your own mental performance. What's up, party people? Welcome to the Down Dog Athletics Podcast. My name is Paul Klingen, and I'm your host, and I'm really excited to get to today's guest. Davey Fisher, someone that I've followed for a long time. He's a great source of motivation from a fitness standpoint. He's really funny, and he's just everything you'd want out of social media follow. Great music taste in his stories, and I was just thinking about social media, and as a millennial, I feel like, man, we've had the total ringer that we've had to go through from MySpace, and then I got to college, and I was like, you got to get on Facebook, so I got on Facebook. Then I was leaving college. What are you not doing on Instagram? And now I've been on Instagram for a while, and then there's been Vine, maybe a little YouTube, and then now it's TikTok. Man, TikTok. I can't tell if this is like the worst of society or the best of society. I just got a kitten, and so everything I'm trying to do is just film funny things of her. And this isn't a plug for my TikTok. If you want 5 out of 10, maybe 6 out of 10 funny content with cats related, then it's definitely the place to go. But I feel like millennials have kind of had it hard, and a lot of people would say that we've had it really easy, but you look back, we've dealt with 9/11, we've dealt with the 2008 crisis, housing crisis, 2008 recession crisis, whatever, and now we got this coronavirus. I feel like we'll have a pretty good story to tell, and when you go back into the history books, the millennials will have kind of dealt with some shit, and so that's cool. Shout out to the millennials out there. I feel like that's a lot of this audience anyway, so hope that's the case. Anyway, back to today's guest, Davey Fisher. I think 2 things that I really took away from this, and I'll share them with you so that you can kind of listen to this podcast through that lens. One, through the lens of mental health, he does such a good job of not taking himself too seriously and having fun and just shooting the shit. And I think we all take ourselves way too seriously, and that's one of the messages that he has, is we need to not take ourselves so seriously. Yeah, there's definitely a time to focus in, to take things serious, but also so much stress comes from thinking that everything is this big, giant problem that's going to defeat us, and in the case, it usually isn't. And then the other thing that I took away is the guy's worked really hard, and we see things on social media and think, oh, everyone's had everything so easy, but we don't see the dude living in his car for a year. We don't see him being homeless, him literally going paycheck to paycheck, being in a ton of debt. And I don't want to take too much of the story away from him, but 2 things to, again, look through the lens of like, wow, like this guy's really cool, he's really funny, but there's also 2 really cool messages that I think translate well into mental health and into hard work. So with that, I'll get right into it. Here we go. Davey Fisher. What's up, Davey? Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, what's up? Thanks for having me.
I was just commenting right before we popped on. You were throwing up some wall balls like 200 meters in the air. But what was funny is the music that you had went from yesterday was like all country, and then today it was like more hip hop balanced. And I was downstairs with my girlfriend, and she was listening to some country station, and it was some girl singing Neon Moon, which I was like, wait,
Oh, is that right?
that's a Brooks and Dunn song. Who's this girl singing
Yeah.
Neon Moon? And now that's been in my head on top of Red Rag Top for the last like hour and a half.
Yep. Oh,
And
that's a classic. Tim
now
McGraw.
I feel like I'm getting old enough to where, like, I used to make fun of people who were like, oh, that's actually an Aerosmith song. And now here I am being like, that's a Brooks and Dunn song. So I don't know what that girl's singing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
My music taste has kind of come full circle since more like the classic rock days growing up to maybe more of a punk rock thing in high school, and then college was more rap and hip hop. And now I kind of like a little bit of everything, and the music variety kind of correlates with my workout variety too, I guess. So I like a little bit of everything.
yeah, you definitely have a lot of variety. And I usually save this for the end of my podcast, but I want to get your take to just like get to know you. And I also feel like you'd have some pretty funny or interesting answers. So one of the first things, one of the questions I'll ask is like, if you got a Metcon finisher at the end of a workout and you got one song to play, like what is your one go-to song to pump you up?
Ooh, it might be, I don't know if I have a go-to one, but I have definitely a top 10. Thunderstruck by AC/DC's
Oh yeah.
probably in there. I can't overplay it or overuse it because then it kind of loses its oomph, I guess. But I like a lot. You could throw almost any Red Hot Chili Peppers banger on there. Man, I like Macklemore as well. 10,000 Hours was a song I just actually put up there, I think, today
Oh
on
yeah.
one of those. He's a Pacific Northwest guy, by the way. He
Yeah.
played at PLU my junior year,
Oh no way.
and nobody knew who the hell the guy was, and including me. And then we had like a Lollapalooza event towards the end of the year, kind of a spring, student concert / festival thing, and he was kind of the headliner, and everybody's like, "Who's Macklemore?" Oh yeah, he's kind of like that local guy. I think he's like a rapper guy. And then a few years later, I think it was maybe 4 years later, he was #1 on iTunes with The Heist, that album that came out. So it was kind of cool to see, his career take off.
Yeah, that's crazy. Did he go by Macklemore then, or did he go by something different?
No, he went with Macklemore. Him and Ryan Lewis were both there. Ryan Lewis was kind of his DJ more or less, I think. But yeah, he came and played junior year. That would have been 2012.
Wow, I had no idea PLU was loaded with so much talent.
I don't know about that, but yeah, go Lutz, baby.
Go
That was
Lutz.
just 8 years ago. Hard to believe.
That was 8 years ago. So when did
Yeah,
you? What? How old are you now?
I'm turning 30 in September.
Okay, so we're the same age. I just turned 29 in January, so it makes sense that
Oh, right on. Yeah, welcome to the club. It's your
know a
last
lot of
year
the
of your
same
20s,
people.
so you got to maximize it.
I kind of feel like I got so much. Like I take the perspective that if The Rock and I saw Daniel Craig the other day, and they're like 51, 52. So people usually say 30s, like you fall off the cliff. And I'm like, wow, like that's just
Yeah,
like the first peak. I still got 20 more years to keep chasing whatever The Rock or whoever is like the peak of aesthetic working out. So
sure. Yeah.
it will be definitely a milestone, but maybe I'll actually reach my potential in my 30s or something from a physical
Yeah,
standpoint.
I was talking to actually one of my friends who I was working out with today, Chloe, about this because she recently hurt her back and she's a beast, and does a lot of barbell focused, heavy stuff, kind of CrossFit style workouts, but also is like a distance runner. So she does a little bit of everything. And her back was starting to bother her. And I was telling her about just a few years ago how I would pretty much lift heavy every day unless I was kind of hurt, which started to gradually increase in frequency as I approached, 27, 28, 29. Gradually, the frequency and intensity of the injuries, mostly lower back stuff, got more and more severe, basically. And I eventually kind of had to refocus what I was doing because I think I was just kind of, nose to the grindstone type of approach. And I can go, 100% every day unless I'm injured. And that was kind of my mantra at the time. It was go hard or go home kind of a thing. And now, even looking back just to a few short years ago, I wish I would have been a little bit smarter and more well-rounded about my training. It was a lot of barbell focused movements. I love cleans. I love deads. And I would do them multiple times a week as part of just regular programming. And I would do them heavy too, which, isn't, I knew it kind of wasn't the textbook way to go about it, but I just enjoyed it so much that it became kind of my regular routine. And then, back injury and then a knee thing. And all of a sudden I felt like I was kind of burning myself out. So I'm really starting to kind of focus more on the longevity of my workouts and my body rather than how much weight I can lift and how many times I can lift it.
Yeah, 100%. And I feel like that's where, if you were an athlete, whether it was in high school or college, that's what you're measured on, right? You have the
Oh,
squat and
totally.
the bench press and the deadlift. And I didn't really work out in high school. And so when I got to Washington State, I remember my trainer being like, Paul, you're the most slow twitch athlete I've ever seen. And at the time, I didn't even know what that meant. So I was like, thanks. But what it
Yeah.
meant was I had zero fast twitch muscle fiber. So we would go to like power clean, and I was the lowest in our group. But then conditioning, I would absolutely crush because I can just run or just go because those are my
Yeah.
slow
You have
twitch
the
muscle
diesel
fibers.
engine, so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah.
You were a baseball guy. Is that right?
Yep. Catcher. And so even then I was like, can we just stretch and like do like relaxing stuff? So
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was definitely different, but it's interesting that you bring up the fact that people will use barbells and maybe they break down. But that's where I wonder, it's like when you get 30 and into your 30s, is it the practices that you've been doing are breaking you down, or could you have been going healthy the entire time if you'd mixed it up or been smarter or known what was contraindicated, or mixed in like more recovery? Because a lot of people are kind of like you, where it's like go 100%, go hard, go home, like absolutely crush yourself and then show up the next day and do it again. And I think the science is getting smarter with it, but as just the like society, maybe in LA too, like it's so go, 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 go. And it's really hard to be like, I need to pull back a little bit and do like some stretching or something that's just like a med ball, like you did yesterday or whatever today. And
Yeah, that was today. Yeah.
so it's interesting to see how with me and how you talk about it, with how really like training evolves. And I know you're someone too, like you have your CSCS, you've done a bunch of certifications. What are some of the things that you've done recently, or at least people in the industry that you might look up to, where you're like, this is some really smart stuff, and you've already started to incorporate it with your training and with clients?
Yeah, I think I've always approached my clients kind of as if, okay, what if I was the client? How would I want to be trained? And you kind of want to mesh what's best for that person, along with what they want to do. Because if you just do what you want to do, then you're not really fulfilling maybe your true obligation as a service to that person. You don't want to constantly be making somebody do something they hate, because they're not going to get as much out of it. If you allow them to kind of mesh what they want to do, like what's their goal. A lot of people, especially down in LA, are more aesthetically driven. So it's a little more vanity, they want to look good and things like that. But you also want to mix in a lot of functional components of strength, fitness, endurance, all that stuff to kind of make a well-rounded program. For me, kind of alluding to what you said earlier, it was more working around a lot of barbell focused movements that I kind of, started to burn myself out on. I noticed that I would almost PR and then not be able to come close to hitting that weight or those rep schemes again for a long period of time. And I kind of knew, like, okay, maybe this requires a little bit more periodization, or this requires a little bit more, movement variety and things like that. So I went back to the drawing board, just the last couple of years with respect to my own routine, just because I felt like, okay, I don't think I'll ever be able to clean. I gave up kind of my goal of, cleaning 315. And everything was very numbers focused. And as opposed to now, the quantity focused stuff that I used to do, it's more quality focused. So how can I deload a certain movement? In other words, take weight off and make it as hard as possible. So a good example of that is, a back squat is a staple, right? It's a movement staple. It's very much focused on how much weight you can lift, how many times, and very much oriented around a max. Everybody kind of has their max, right? But instead of doing heavy loaded barbell back squats, now I'll do Bulgarian split squats without much weight, or I'll focus on eccentric components, slowing the movement down, adding pauses. So I guess for me, long story short, the best way I could sum that up is to say that working a little bit smarter and not harder. How can I take away weight or loading and make things harder?
Yeah. And I heard
I
you
think a
talk.
lot of my issues was compression related, especially spinal stuff. I had an MRI about 6 months ago, and there was just stenosis all over the place. And this orthopedic doctor that kind of took a look at some of my MRIs basically was like, all right, here's your spine. This is a healthy spine at age, 29, 30. And then here's a 60-year-old spine. And he wanted me to see the clear difference between, what a healthy 30-year-old looked like and a 60-year-old looked like. And mine definitely looked, more like the 60-year-old. And for me, that was kind of that eye-opening moment.
Yeah.
Where I had to look at what I was doing and really refocus a lot of my programming, take the weight off. It's not always about how much you can lift and how many times. And like, even if, I go back into some of my old workout videos and things, I used to think, man, I was a lot stronger than I might ever be again. But you kind of have to chase new goals just to keep things fresh. Because if you're always, approaching the same movements, the same lifts, it's really easy to get disappointed, because most of the time you're not going to PR, in the gym on any given day. So it's about more of kind of a longitudinal approach over time. You know what I mean? You
Yeah.
can still go hard, but you just have to have enough movement variety and in there to, make your routine well-rounded rather than more singular approach. It's not all about bench, squat, and power clean. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. And especially with coronavirus and everyone being locked inside where you can't throw a barbell around, people are having to get more creative. And I think the smart people are doing exactly what you talked about, where it's eccentric work, isometric work. How can you do like a mechanical drop set or a superset to where the intensity is still there? You're still getting enough maybe muscle stimulus, but you're not compressing the spine to the point where you have a 60-year-old spine, or doing something else that, you see a lot of
Totally.
shoulder injuries as well, where everyone wants to throw a bar up overhead, or
Yep.
and people, especially with the society we have, everyone's like hunched forward on their phones, and that's a even more common injury now. Like shoulders becoming just up there with the spine, and so I think it's smart, and I think we'll come out of it with a little bit more variety in like how we can approach things. But I'm glad you spoke to all the different ways to train. You've mentioned a couple times by just about like what you're training for, rethinking like your periodization. I'm curious what it is that you train for, what it is that motivates you. Obviously, you have a background and you talk about side hustle of modeling, and I don't know if maybe that's something that you train for where it's aesthetic focused, but I
Not
also
really.
get the sense that you're a lot more smart with it. It's a lot more power and strength as opposed to just looking good. So what is it that you use to be kind of your North Star from a fitness standpoint, knowing that you also got to be able to show up and at a shoot and look good?
Yeah, I think it's less focused around, I mean, everybody wants to, look good, feel good, play good was what a coach always said in college to us. And they all kind of go hand in hand for the most part. But I guess part of it would be uh, as a trainer, you have to walk your talk. You have to have a higher requisite range of physical abilities, aptitude, skills, and you have to be good at whatever it is you're making somebody else do. I see a lot of the exceptions to the rule, especially down here in LA, where I think it's more of a job to some trainers than is a lifestyle. And you might see that reflected in their own habitual patterns. They struggle with their weight, or they struggle just with basic motivation. And we all do. We're all human. But as a trainer, you're kind of an ambassador to your clients with respect to your body and taking care of yourself. Nobody's exempt from struggling with motivation. Nobody's exempt from having a hard time maybe in the gym. Everybody has their hard days. It's a grind at some point to everyone, no matter how much you love working out or fitness. I mean, I love it and I work out, every day, but I also have my days where I'm just slow and I'm sluggish and I'm not into it. And I got to kind of force feed myself some monotonous, kind of kick-ass workout. It's not fun, but I think for me, what really pushes me is knowing that my clients kind of look up to me as somebody who, I would never ask them to do something that I wouldn't do myself. So I think there's a lot of accountability built in as a trainer and health and fitness professional, because, you don't want to be that trainer. It's almost like going to the dentist and your dentist has a bunch of cavities, or
Oh
you're
yeah.
going to a financial advisor who's bankrupt, or, I don't know. You can use your own
I love
analogy.
those analogies. I use that all the time where it's like I want to walk the walk, and like I would never hire a coach, trainer, whatever you want to call them, that doesn't do exactly what they're telling me to do. And not exactly, obviously there's a little bit of variance. And you've talked about when you worked with like professional athletes, and there comes a point to where you can't do what that maybe professional
Totally.
athlete
Right.
should do.
Yeah. It's pretty easy to make Adrian Peterson run through a set of cones. But, at the end of the day, can you get the average person to do something that they don't want to do?
Yeah.
I think there's a much broader clientele base. As a trainer, just with working with general population, you're not always going to be working with the most prolific athletes. So you got to be able to kind of relate to the people who are just trying to be good at the basics, and so I think, there's a lot of that as well.
Yeah. So one of the other things that you do with your time and coaching as a health professional, I love that you use that as opposed to trainer, because you're right, trainer is such an ambiguous term, and semantics
Yeah,
really
it's kind of
can.
overused. It's a job for a lot of people, you know?
Yeah, and I was talking to a buddy the other day, and he was talking about like this motivational, like Navy SEAL, and he was coming to a group and saying, "Oh, you guys all need to like be authentic and be raw." And then we were also saying how like Brene Brown can come into the same room and be like, "You guys need to be vulnerable." And depending on who they're talking to, like that sounds absolutely amazing or that sounds absolutely terrible. And you can have someone
Yeah.
who maybe had a terrible trainer and they're like, the last thing I want is a personal trainer, because there's such a broad spectrum. And you see that in
Yeah.
training, you see it in coaching. I feel like you're starting to see it even more and more as people come up with. I almost like that there's being privatized certifications as opposed to having someone go to a university for 4 years. But at the same
Sure.
time, at least
Yeah.
you have a standard there, whereas like a CSCS means something, a PhD means something. If you have 6 certifications in life coaching, what does that mean? I have no idea.
Yeah.
And so
Yep.
it can be amazing or it cannot be. But coming back to the other question I had is you work at the ranch in Malibu, and a lot of the work that you do there I find really interesting because it's people kind of coming on a retreat. So talk
Hmm.
about that and how you connect with those people and get them, because we only have them for a week or maybe
Yep.
2, but how do you get
Yep.
them to see that the last 30 or 40 or 50 years that they've been doing something might not be the best, and in a week like create change that lasts beyond just that the time at the ranch?
Yeah. So, for anybody who's not familiar, the Ranch Malibu is basically a holistic sort of health and wellness resort and spa, out in Malibu. And it's kind of tucked away in the Santa Monica Mountains where you're not meant to have much phone service throughout the duration of your entire stay or much connectivity to your personal or professional life. A lot of people come with coworkers, family members, or even by themselves to kind of just unplug and maybe de-stimulate, I guess is the right word. But they come and they stay for at least a week. And throughout their stay, there's kind of minimal time on the phone. There's no TV, there's no caffeine, there's no alcohol. Some people mistake it for a rehab type center. It's not really that. Maybe a rehab in the sense that maybe some sort of I don't know, kind of vitality based experience for some, or I guess sometimes they term it pattern interruption. We try to get people out of the groove of their daily life, and whatever chronic stressful stimuli is kind of wearing them down, we try to get them out on the trails in the Santa Monica Mountains where they hike 3 to 4 hours a day. They do afternoon strength training with me. Basically, it's a class-based program that's highly participatory. So everybody kind of does everything throughout the day. There's yoga, there's personalized massage, etc. So there's a lot of accountability built into the program. And for me, it's kind of, to be honest, it is a little bit harder to relate to a lot of that demographic because they're coming from very well polished lifestyles and professional backgrounds where they have a lot of money, and they're there for a week to kind of maximize themselves physically. And I think a lot of people come from places of they've lived a life of comfort for so long where they're used to the routine, and maybe they've lost touch with what it feels like to actually pour themselves into something or work hard. It's easy to get kind of fat and lazy when everything's going great, and life's never fair. But some of these people come in and they've had a pretty easy situation for the majority of their lives, personally, financially. Others obviously have worked, maybe their asses off to get there. But everybody, as soon as they arrive, is kind of considered part of, you know, part of. They're starting with a clean slate, I guess. And for me, I kind of have to be the guy to get everybody going in the gym and motivate them, show them how strength training can be beneficial for their life. Because a lot of people, I think, they refer to exercise as cardio, and the hikes out there in Malibu are kind of the foundational component of the program. But the yoga, the strength training, all that stuff is also crucial. So it's about not just giving someone a fish. It's about teaching someone to fish in terms of, hey, this is why we do strength training. This is how it benefits you. A lot of people, they know the basics of fitness, but they really out of touch physically with what it feels like to really get their asses kicked, And so that's kind of where I have to come in. And usually Monday's the day where you kind of have to bring everybody in on board and make it hard. You have to make it a little bit tougher maybe than most days, because that's how you get people to buy in. You don't really give them a lot of room to talk, and hopefully they're breathing hard enough to where they can't really carry on a conversation anyway. But as soon as they're in there for that first class with me, it's kind of full steam ahead, and they gradually start to buy in just through doing. I try to convince them of, why is strength training crucial for your longevity? I mean, it really represents the strength for, the foundation of your body. I mean, it's not just muscular, but a lot of it's neurological, your nervous system, connective tissue, ligaments, tendons, fascia. The framework of your body will last a lot longer, and it will be a lot stronger if you strength train. Your metabolic health is going to be a lot better. Insulin sensitivity, those types of things. If people struggle with blood sugar. So you try to kind of give them a holistic education of why and how something like that can benefit them. It's as much about having them do it as it is teaching them why it's good. And most people, when they know something's good for you, they'll do it. But if a workout is just kind of approached as a task oriented thing, something you have to do, you don't really know maybe how it's benefiting you all that much besides, okay, burning calories, losing weight, etc. But the more reasons you give somebody why exercise will benefit them and how it will benefit them over the course of the rest of their life, the more likely they are to kind of carry it on. And then the harder they work over the course of that week at the ranch, the more they want to maintain those results when they leave. So I think there's a lot of accountability there, because a lot of people have never busted their ass that hard for 6 straight days. So the last thing they want to do is leave and go get fat again.
Yeah, it's interesting. You have a opportunity to work with people that you mentioned they have never really had to work hard for something, or sometimes they do work really hard for something. But
for some,
they're very well off. But I almost picture it coming back to the whole like trainer thing, where they come in and they've always been focused like, all right, as long as I'm not eating a lot of calories, I'm doing my cardio for my exercise, and like I'm doing this detox, like that's all I need to know. Like I imagine some of them come in with kind of that frame of mind. And my girlfriend and I were watching TikTok, and this girl's like, I'm not a nutritionist, but I've been doing this cinnamon detox water to lose weight. Here's my recipe. And I'm just like, what? And yet thousands of people will be like, oh my God, I love this. So I imagine that you deal with that a good amount in LA, where like that stuff can be like kind of common, where people are like, oh, X amount of dollars to post this. Sure, I'll do that.
Totally.
And so that's where it's interesting that you have that opportunity to go in and share like, hey, here's a myriad of reasons why this is going to be beneficial. And then getting them to buy into it as like, oh, I should also strength train, or I should also push myself beyond my comfort zone, even though my comfort zone is massive. Is there any like conversations that you have around that where maybe it's a little bit harder to get them to see the value of it, or do they kind of see it and feel it? I always find that like the physical training aspect is such a great avenue into the mental benefits of working out, or the nutritional benefits, or all these other things. Is that kind of what you find as well?
Sure. Yeah. And I the way I like to tell them, especially carrying momentum, away from the ranch after they leave, it's a lot easier to keep the ball rolling, than it is to get it rolling. And when people can kind of start to see, and more importantly, even feel healthier, they notice they're stronger. Overall, they just feel better. They get kind of addicted to that lifestyle. But it takes a little bit of time to set in. Like if short term, when you have those opiates kind of circulating through your body post workout, all those feel good hormones, that's great, but it's going to go away pretty quick. It becomes more of a perpetual process when somebody's really, working hard to earn those results day after day. They continue to work hard over time because they know that they don't want to lose it.
Yeah.
And just like you could, get to the top of the mountain in fitness, you could fall off pretty quick. And just like your body gets in, can get in great shape in a pretty short amount of time, it could get out of shape just as easily. So there's a lot of built-in accountability, I think, that keeps people going,
Yeah. I love that you mentioned that it's really easy for people to get to the pinnacle and then fall off so easy. A lot of people think that you I kind of think of it as like a video game where it's like, all right, I get to level 70, I can just save here, and then I can go mess it up and then revert back to it. And it's kind of like a smack in the face when you're like, wait, I used to be able to dribble this basketball between my legs, or I used to be able to run an 8-minute mile, and then you can't. And I talk a lot on this podcast about mental health too, and how you got to like work on that stuff every day, and you got to work on your body, and you got to work on your mind, you got to work on your spirit. I want to kind of shift this.
Totally.
I want to kind of shift this to kind of like what I know you do a really good job of like BSing and being really like fun and lighthearted. And I think that for a lot of people helps them stay positive. And so I'm curious how you handle like maybe the modeling industry and all that stuff that you do there that can be very negative, can be toxic, or maybe even social media where that is like this necessary evil. But at the same time, like you do such a good job of like kind of making a joke about it that I find that's a really good way to kind of like depressurize and de-stress. And so
Oh yeah, you have to.
I just kind of want to hear your approach to that because it's
Sure.
so fun to see you like have ice cream on your face and then you're on a billboard and that's such a dichotomy, which I think is really healthy.
Well, I just think levity goes such a long way, especially in today's day and age. I've talked with some other people about this. I think in terms of Instagram, it's not necessarily an accurate projection of your life, but if you want to kind of perpetuate something or some kind of existence, I think the best things you can put out there, especially right now, are motivation and sense of humor. And the balance of those is usually, they're kind of on opposite ends of the spectrum, sort of what you alluded to. But in terms of levity, you can be in great shape and, bust your ass and be kind of a hard-nosed person. But at the same time, having a little bit of extra balance with, the levity stuff and learning to be able to laugh is kind of that stuff that psychologically will allow you to live super happy and healthy. You're going to live a lot longer, happier and healthier existence on this planet if you're not taking everything so damn serious all the time, because there's a lot of people who, me included, I've been there, where it's just a task-oriented approach to life. In college, I was like, hardcore straight A, track in the spring, football in the fall, didn't really ever drink, was terrified of going out, getting in trouble. I just, did my homework, and that was my focus. It was kind of my job. After I graduated college, it was kind of became more of like the, sort of work hard, play hard, where I went out for the first times, but still wanted to make sure, I busted my butt in the workplace to, maximize myself professionally. And I think I started to see the balance there. It was the first few years after I graduated college where I realized this stuff isn't worth it if I can't have fun. If everything's always a number to you, your salary or your job title or whatever, then you're not going to be able to appreciate it and have as much fun if you're taking the whole process too serious. You have to be able to laugh at your mistakes and how many times you've screwed up. And I've definitely been hard on myself, throughout a lot of my failures. And, most people might not be able to recognize them, but I have as many as anybody else out there. And what helps you get over them is not dwelling on the mistakes you made, but it's just kind of making light of, okay, I can move past this with kind of a renewed sense of who you are, but also knowing that it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to fail. And sometimes it's even okay to make fun of yourself and laugh at those mistakes. I think that kind of stuff is crucial. When I started, the whole modeling thing, it was something I never expected to even do. What's the movie with Ben Stiller and it's like the classic, like modeling movie with Owen Wilson, Ben Stiller, and
Why
Will
is
Ferrell.
that Will Ferrell?
Anyway, it's one of those.
I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah, it's a comedy, and that's kind of how I approach the whole modeling thing, because somebody essentially recruited me to an agency in Beverly Hills when I was kind of new to LA, struggling professionally, trying to figure out my life. And I didn't want to take any opportunity that I felt that I had already moved past professionally. Like I didn't want to take a step back moving down to LA just to get by. That wasn't my prerogative. Eventually I had to swallow my pride and kind of do that and then work my way up from the bottom, and took a couple steps back and a couple steps to the side before I could take a couple steps forward. But that was kind of part of the process. It's what I needed to do to be able to kind of fully appreciate where I am now. There were a lot of losses. There were a lot of epic fails in the process. And, but also there were a lot of times that I, used it as a moment to kind of laugh at myself and, some of my shortcomings. And that's why I think it's important to have, even some of the, the workout stuff that I do, a lot of it isn't, it's not super functional. It's not super safe. And I don't want to, make that something that they see a video of mine and they want to try to do it, because a lot of it's not safe and it's kind of stupid, but that's kind of why I do it, because I want to see if I can. And if I fail and screw up, it's going to be a good
content.
It's going to be a good fail video. Right. And then people can laugh.
I love those. I love those ones that you post.
Yeah. I have another one I think coming out tomorrow too. And there's a lot more fails than I'm able to even put in some of these videos, but that's part of the point. You have to be able to fail, and you have to be able to laugh at some of those failures to really maximize yourself. You're going to live, like I said, a lot more stress-free life if you're able to do that. That's why I think levity is key in today's day and age. Everybody takes everything so serious. And I say that because I know that I used to do that. And the more lighthearted we're able to be with our outlook as humans, the better off we're going to be,
Yeah, I 100% agree. Is the movie Night at the Roxbury?
No, but that's along the same lines.
I thought it was Ben Stiller and Will Ferrell. It might be. Yeah, it's definitely
I mean, that was kind of my whole perception of, the modeling industry. It was kind of a joke. No, it wasn't a joke. That sounds bad or ungrateful from my perspective, but I didn't know what the heck an agency was. I didn't know how it worked. I thought if I can get one job out of this, that's cool, and make just a few $100 or whatever. And then after I got my first job, it turned out to be, like a men's health editorial. I was like totally pumped. I had no idea that I could be in a magazine. And it was just a couple months after signing with an agency. I still barely knew what was going on. I got an email that said men's health editorial with a call time and a date and some more specifics regarding the photo shoot. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. It felt like an April Fool's prank to me. Yeah, it was just, I was as blown away as anybody else. And it wasn't like a big money job, but to me, the money was besides the point. It was like, wow, this is the real deal. It was like $250. But for me at the time, the money didn't really matter. I'm like, I'm going to have fun with this, and what's the point if you don't have fun? I think a lot of these super polished actors and models maybe have, this lifelong dream of making it in that scene or in Hollywood or whatever, but they try so hard that I think it doesn't work for them because they're overcompensating. I think there is such a thing as trying too hard, and that'll be reflected in I think what happens ultimately. You have to be able to kind of joke around and be loose with it, because if you take it too seriously, it might not, work out in your favor. That's kind of the attitude that I went in with, is if this doesn't work out, well, who cares? I didn't really put a whole lot of eggs in that basket anyway. So I've always kind of kept my eggs in different baskets. And if this doesn't work out, then, who cares? Because I still have a bunch of other eggs or a bunch of other baskets. So in terms of, work and levity, I think it's crucial. I mean, you want to be able to be taken seriously, but at the same time, if that's your whole life balance, it's just work and there's no play in there, then I mean, what's work without play,
Yeah, 100%. I remember there's a time I quit my job at Amazon and I was a trainer, but at the same time I was like, oh, maybe I can do some side modeling hustle. Like felt like I was fit, so I was going to try it. And I did the shoot, and it was funny listening to your story, because you're like, what's a book, what's a portfolio? And like I was kind of in the same spot where I found a photographer. I was like, hey, can we do a shoot? And I spent all this time like no alcohol, no sugar, no, like I got super lean, and I was like at this like the best I'd ever looked. And what people don't tell you is like when you take it so serious and you get so lean, and you're not actually like happy and healthy with where you're at. And
Totally.
I did the shoot. I came home, had like 6 cupcakes, 7 rosés, an entire pizza, entire pad thai. And it's just like that total pendulum swing that you'll see people do who like were really restrictive. And
Yeah.
at that point I was like, man, like this does not seem like something that's sustainable. And then I get on the phone with them. They're like, yeah, like this could work. We just need you to like lean out a little bit. And I was just like, I never talked to him again. I was like, I can't lean out.
Yeah,
Like, you know how
exactly.
long
Well,
it took to get these shoulders? Like that's a lot of push-ups, man. And that
yeah, a
was
lot
like
of
the
people live
area.
in that labor. They live in that labor for as long as their modeling career lasts, which unbeknownst to them might not be as long as they had hoped. And you just never know. It's kind of a feast or famine industry. You never know when the next job is. The reality is 90% of the jobs are no's, and you have to be cool with that. You have to kind of, if you take every job super seriously, then you're going to be let down 90% of the time because you're not going to get all the jobs that you think you're going to get or that you want. And that's kind of also where that not taking it so seriously or levity stuff really comes in handy, because you won't be as disappointed,
Yeah.
and a lot of these people, it's this continuous labor of, like you said, trying to maybe stay a certain weight or a certain look. And you can't really live your life like that permanently, and when I first signed with Wilhelmina, that was one of the first things that my agent said. He's like, we're going to need you to lose 15 pounds. Is that okay? And right then I kind of thought he was joking. So I smiled, and then there was like this pause. And I was like, oh, you really want me to lose weight? And he said, yeah, I mean, the reality is, you're probably not going to get many jobs if you do, or if you don't, excuse me. And I thought that was so ridiculous. I'm like, look, my life was great before all this stuff. I don't need this to be a happy person, and I told him, I was like, maybe I'll lose a few pounds, but I'm definitely not going to maintain 15 pounds less than what I am now, just to abide by somebody's criteria as to what they think I should look like or what they think I should be. If it works out for me, great. If not, then I'm not going to lose 15 pounds to make it work. It
Yeah.
was kind of one of those where I wanted to be able to live my life, and you have to, otherwise you're going to be sacrificing something. It almost relates to a client who maybe they have this unrelenting love of like dark chocolate. Are you going to take away the one thing that they need to, kind of have maybe dessert here and there? I never tell even my clients who, they like to go out and have drinks on the weekends. I go out on the weekends too, and I have drinks. I would never ask somebody to do something that I wouldn't do. It's about balance.
Yeah.
Relating to fitness, it's like I work out as a trainer, especially because I want, obviously, to walk my talk, but also to be able to maintain a lifestyle that I want to live. I want to be able to go and have, a massive plate of nachos at a sports bar with a bunch of my buddies, because without those things, I'm not as happy.
Yeah.
I don't approach my workouts as like this necessary evil, and I don't,
It's not a punishment.
neurotically meal prep just for no reason. Otherwise, it becomes very task oriented, and you become kind of neurotic about it, and it doesn't maybe fit well into your lifestyle. And then you're cramming a square peg into a round hole. I want to work out so that I can kind of eat certain things, when I crave them. It is about balance ultimately,
Yeah.
and
100%.
especially at least in my life.
I like that you talk about like having nachos with the boys, where it's like that is so de-stressing and that's such a good feeling. And to be able to do that when people are so restrictive, they cut out all these things that are actually really good for them as well. Like there's a balance to eating only
Oh,
broccoli.
sure.
Like
Yeah.
sure, you do need more greens, but like myself personally during this coronavirus, I'm really focusing on just running a ton, and I might train for a marathon. And I'm like, okay, well, that means that I can have pizza, and that's great. I
Yeah.
love pizza. And so rather than looking at like pizza as a bad thing, it's like, great, I'm going to go have the best run ever because I just smashed 1,000 calories of pizza the next day. So I can
Totally.
run like 15 miles and it's going to feel great. And so even just in myself in the last year, like looking at food as fuel rather than looking at food as something to be like counted and manipulated. It's like, all right,
Yep.
you,
a
you had
thousand
some
percent.
you had some nachos, great, go smash an awesome workout the next day. And it's just like, yeah, try and have like an 80-20 approach to it. But I love like your perspective on that And I've gotten like, there's a couple ways that I feel like people can get really good perspective to laugh at things and realize like, hey, things aren't that bad. Like, we're fine. I've traveled a decent amount to where I can be like, this sucks, but I've also seen how people in El Salvador live, so it's actually not that
Sure.
bad. And I really love your
Yep.
story. I'd love for you to share even just a shorter version of it, where it's like you're living on the couch and you're chasing your dreams down in LA. So would you just, I don't want to steal any thunder. So can you share a little bit on that story, on like where you were, where things might seem like, oh, you're living this great lifestyle, but it's not always how it seems.
Totally. Well, yeah, and it gets back to kind of that illusion that we see on social media. Things are projected as kind of your ultimate, almost like fantasy. A lot of people project an image out there of them that's not realistic, or a lifestyle that's not realistic. And maybe based on what somebody might see of me now, they for sure wouldn't believe where I was in 2015. Everybody kind of has their own journey, and I don't want to pretend like mine was, a lot harder than a lot of other people have had to go through to get to where they are. I think for me, it was just the fact that I was coming basically off of, a private school education that I really valued, particularly because my parents, put me through half of my, they paid for half my tuition in school. And then the other half was covered with a tuition waiver that was via scholarship. Just they don't give full ride athletic scholarships, D3, but if you maintain a certain GPA during your time in school, I got a good deal. So I came out of school kind of with a chip on my shoulder, like, any overachiever student might, and looking for a great opportunity in the workplace. I got my feet wet in up there in kind of Bellevue, Seattle area, working with Pro Sports Club. And that was kind of more or less a corporate wellness-based environment, kind of highly clinical stuff, prescriptive exercise, weight loss, metabolic disorders, etc. And it was the best kind of personal training and almost like hybrid occupational therapy experience I could have asked for at the time. I felt like I wouldn't have traded my experience working with people for a couple years up there for any certification, because it became invaluable to ultimately, eventually, what would become more of my freelance career in LA. I learned how kind of the business of training worked, and more importantly, working with people in a real life, application based setting. It was kind of really putting, pencil to paper when it came to all the stuff I had learned in school. So I got an opportunity down in LA to basically work alongside the NFL Combine athletes, doing some strength and conditioning stuff as like an assistant coach was basically my title. And I didn't know a lot of what it would entail or what it would mean, but I knew it was going to be like firsthand access to a lot of elite athletes and pro sports, players in a variety of like talents between baseball and football. And there was U.S. women's soccer down there that we got to help out with. So I knew the exposure level was ultimately going to be the best takeaway. I knew there wasn't much of a seasonal job at the end of the tunnel, because it was a seasonal kind of contracted opportunity where essentially on paper it was an assistantship. And I thought, well, what better time to get out of Seattle than the winter? I mean, as you know, it can be dark and wet and gray and cold. And so I took basically 3 months to go to LA, and I had no intention of moving here at all. I told all my clients and my supervisors, my bosses, that, hey, I'll be down. I got approval for, getting 90 days of unpaid leave. And at that point they said, yeah, go do it, jump into it. And so I stayed with some family friends when I first moved down, because rent obviously down here was crazy. And I was still paying rent in Seattle, knowing that I would eventually return back to my apartment up there in Kirkland, Washington. And after my first 2 months, I definitely liked the assistantship and everything was great, but it also came with the expectation that you were going to mop the floors at the end of the day and, put in your time in that sense. So I kind of figured at the end of that 90 days, maybe I can find something else. I kind of learned to see some cool parts about LA, where I felt like if I could make it in Los Angeles, I could make it anywhere. And I had also a feeling that if I went back up to Seattle and resumed my corporate job, which was great, you know, it had the package benefits and it made me feel adult and qualified and professional and all that. But I felt like there was a lot more to my life than doing that forever. If I didn't leave then, I might never leave, you know. Not that I didn't love, you know, living in Kirkland, and the organization I worked for was amazing. But I just felt like if there was a way for me to really find out what my full potential is, what better place to test it out than LA. And at the end of the 90 days, there wasn't, like I mentioned earlier, there wasn't much of a light at the end of the tunnel. There was no job offer or anything. So I kind of had to start from scratch. And I moved out of my basically family friend's place in Long Beach. And by the way, was commuting up to Manhattan Beach. If you know LA, you know that's about an hour and a half commute in the morning. So I would try to get in really early and basically, get my workout in so that way I can beat traffic. Basically, the facility that I was working through, doing all the combine stuff, they let me kind of stay on part-time to help out, unpaid. And I was more than happy to, because for me, it was a free place for me to do my laundry, shower, have a gym, you know, and I wasn't working much yet anyway. So I figured, you know, what the heck. So I kind of continued there on a part-time basis while trying to figure out, you know, where the hell I was going to live, and had met a few friends that were gracious enough to let me kind of couch surf for a period of, you know, about a month, where I didn't have a permanent residence for the first time in my life. And my lease up in Seattle had expired. And I kind of felt like I didn't have that security blanket anymore. The nice part is I wasn't having to pay rent up there. But the scary part is the money that I had saved to live down in LA ran out a lot faster than I thought. And I had to find a place to live. And more importantly, I had to afford a place wherever I was going to live. And I had worked out in Santa Monica on the beach, you know, at Muscle Beach a few times. And I kind of knew ultimately that's where I wanted to land. That was my favorite place in LA. And I would go just to work out. I would drive from, wherever I was staying, which was kind of scattered around everywhere from like Sherman Oaks to Manhattan Beach to Culver City, just bouncing around with friends who would let me stay. And spent a fair share of nights in my Subaru WRX at the time, just with the seat reclined. If you drive one of those, you know the seat doesn't recline.
My brother has one of those. Yeah,
they're pretty small on the inside, and that was kind of my, I didn't want to bug any friend to the point where I was staying at their place, just totally freeloading for weeks at a time. So I'd spend a few nights, at a certain spot, and then I'd spend maybe a night or two in my car, and then a couple nights over another friend's place, and then just kind of bounce around for a month. But in the meantime, I would always make a point to drive out to Santa Monica and just get a workout in on the beach. And one particular day, a guy was out there working out as well, and we kind of made small talk, and he eventually kind of made an inquiry and asked if I needed a job, because I kind of briefly told him my situation. And he had this health food product startup company, and basically I was like, you know what, I need anything at this point. So I was, more than happy to make it happen. And for me professionally, it didn't feel like a step back, even though financially it definitely was. It was more like a step to the side. And they said, basically, I won't be able to pay you much, but what I can do is I can afford you a lease on 3rd Street in Santa Monica, basically an apartment. And I was blown away. I'm like, 3rd Street in Santa Monica? Like, I can live there for free. Great. And he's like, yeah, no, the company has a lease tied to the building. And if you work for us, you get to live there for free, and we'll pay you, $400 a month. And I was like, perfect, done. Because it was only part-time, So that was enough of a sell to at least get a roof over my head. And what I didn't know at the time when I moved into the apartment is that my bedroom, it was a 2-bedroom place, 2-bed, 2-bath. By the way, it's my current apartment I'm still living in. But at the time, 1 bedroom was being leased out. The president's wife, basically the president of the company, his wife was living there already and had the place to herself. And he actually lived mostly in Italy. So long story short, I was supposed to be in the spare bedroom, but when I got to the apartment, I noticed the whole room was covered from the floor to the ceiling in cardboard boxes, just inventory, product inventory. It was like a lot of, basically it was a health food product startup company. So they did everything from pasta and cookies and all sorts of different foods that were, organic, non-GMO, high protein, low carb, etc. And this brand was out of Italy, and they didn't really have a super effective warehouse and distribution center. So the distribution center became the apartment, and all the boxes that were in the room, it was kind of my job to deliver those throughout LA, different restaurants, everything from Whole Foods to Earth Bar and Erewhon and things like that. So I got to know LA pretty well through that process of just, dropping off orders, delivering shipments. And in the process, I totally was out of training. I didn't have any clients. I wasn't in the fitness industry. I didn't even have a gym membership, which for me is crazy. All I did was work out at the rings and the bars over at Santa Monica Beach. And that was my existence for a while. Eventually the rug was kind of pulled out from underneath me, probably 4 or 5 months later. And sales basically in LA and the rest of the US, we were not hitting certain benchmarks, and they were pulling the plug on all of the startup employees that worked in LA. So I kind of had about 2 weeks to figure out what the heck my next move was. And in the meantime, I had met basically the owner of a local gym who let me teach some classes at his studio right here in Santa Monica. I got a couple cold calls from clients about training them, and I was actually working with them under the table just through a local gym. One guy literally saw me and asked if I was a trainer, like working out.
So
and I
funny.
said, well, not really, but I have been, in the past. And I agreed to work with him just because, he wanted to work with me paying cash. And I didn't even have a set rate at the time. I didn't have a fancy gym to even train through. So I kind of had to hash all that stuff out. And eventually one client became 2 and 2 became 4. And I started taking on more classes at Circuit Work. So leaving the startup company didn't feel like that much of a hit, because I was able to make it work financially. Although I was kind of just getting by. I was floating more or less. To pay rent, in Santa Monica wasn't cheap. After the startup company basically, went under, they weren't able to pay the lease on the building or on my apartment anymore. So I had to come up with the money myself. And for a long time, didn't hardly make any money. I was spending it all on what was, my portion of rent for his 2-bed, 2-bath apartment. And it felt like, even working with clients, teaching classes, I just couldn't make it work. Like it was too much. I started working through a couple different gyms and was teaching 1 million classes a week and working with a few clients under the table. And it just felt like, man, I got to bust my ass for all these training hours and hustle every single day, working these crazy, like 12, 14-hour split shifts where you start at, 5:30 and you're not done till 7:30 or whatever. And I just felt like I can't live my life like this. It wasn't fun. I wasn't enjoying it. Just to pay rent and get by wasn't really working out for me. So I basically had made preliminary plans to go back up to Seattle and was, virtually out of money. I was in the middle of this lease that I thought I had found a sublet for, and kind of plans were set in place for me to bounce, because LA was just kind of a failure to me. All I did was waste a bunch of time and a ton of money and a lot of work hours, just barely keeping my head above water. I had never been in debt before, but for the first time in my life, had credit card debt. And it was just stressful because I felt like I had to do so much just to kind of stay afloat. And I knew that wasn't the existence that I wanted to live. So plans were set in place for me to go back to Seattle, resume my job up there. And they were going to take me back in with open arms. But, I couldn't help but wonder, how far down is like rock bottom? Like, could I really keep doing this until I found an opportunity that would kind of serve as a stepping stone towards the next stepping stone, just to get out of this hole? And it was, not long before I was supposed to leave that I actually got an opportunity. Somebody referred me to the ranch in Malibu, and around the same time I signed with the agency in Beverly Hills, and not only signed with the agency, but a couple months later had my first job. It felt like after I, signed that contract that, man, I wasn't making any money. I wasn't going to, who am I kidding? I'm not going to be a model. I can't model. What the hell was I thinking, even signing that stuff? And sure enough, got my first modeling job. I got a couple more clients through the grapevine that were kind of just referrals, from other clients, and then started working at the ranch. And it felt like between those three things, I was starting to kind of catch my stride. It took, an entire year of me basically not making any money and looking for jobs that didn't work out. The whole startup company experience was great because I learned really what I wanted to do and what I didn't want to do. And I knew I wasn't really cut out for sales and marketing. And, but it was invaluable experience for me to really know what the bottom feels like. I wasn't making hardly any money. I didn't have hardly any money. Had spent a lot of nights in my car that my parents, didn't know about. They didn't know about my financial situation. They had no idea. And I purposely kept everybody in the dark because it was kind of deprecating, to be honest, to go from college and then have a great job and then bail on everything that you had going for you just to get a chance to live in LA. Like, what the hell are you doing? And finally it started, the things started working out towards the end of 2015. And by the beginning of 2016, things were finally on the up and up. And, one thing kind of led to another. The ranch became, as opposed to like a part-time thing, became more of a full-time thing, Monday through Friday. And I started working with more clients on my own, just, clients referring clients. And I never really had to solicit the business, which became a huge weight lifted off my shoulders because I hate the whole sales approach to training where it's a transaction. I feel awkward charging people. I feel awkward doing any kind of sales pitches, which, had been exposed throughout the startup company process. I hated sales. I hated the car salesman approach. And it felt good to have business come to you when you didn't really advertise for it. And then, so my clients kind of became my body of work. And from there, that was kind of my meat and potatoes that pretty much was my, primary form of profession and income for the next year. And then started randomly getting more and more modeling jobs and just like training clients. Once you build rapport with a client in the modeling industry and they book you once, a lot of times they book you again and again. They keep using you, years after, years go by, and it's the same faces, the same people. And you have kind of that established relationship that becomes, crucial. So I'm a beneficiary of a lot of that. And a place like LA, even nepotism is a big deal where it's all about who you know. And not only, my clients in modeling and in training, but just in general, any opportunity that comes your way. A lot of times it's because somebody else contributed. And I would not be where I am without people helping me out. I mean, I was referred to an agency in Beverly Hills. I didn't show up at the front door like that was my life dream. It was never my thing to become a model. I didn't even know about the ranch. Somebody heard about a vacancy in fitness they had and they needed help. And so I kind of stepped in initially as like a just, helping out, part-time role, et cetera. And a lot of my clients, they sent me to other clients and referred me to other people. And that's kind of become the process that now has led my existence in LA, where I'm the beneficiary of a lot of other people being gracious enough to help me out. Cause I sure as hell couldn't have done it on my own. A lot of it was getting lucky and being at the right place at the right time. But, you do have to kind of stick it out to be able to find those opportunities. They're never just going to fall on your lap. You're probably going to have to, put in some time and work before they do, but eventually they will. And I've used this example and told a lot of friends this, but I think a lot of people, when they're approaching any kind of life change, they tend to think that, oh my God, this, like, what if it doesn't work out? Well, what if it doesn't work out? Worst comes to worst, you can fall back on, I'm sure, like, there's always another job or an opportunity or whatever the case is. You're never gonna, it's not like you're gonna be poor on the streets. You'll pick yourself up when, push comes to shove and your back's against the wall. You'll do whatever it takes to get by. And that's kind of what I experienced in 2015 that really allowed me to appreciate the process that it took to get there. It felt a lot better to kind of go through that and then eventually have it work out than for it to just fall in your lap. Not to say that a lot of it didn't fall in my lap, but when you put in the work and then you get lucky with a certain experience, it really feels a heck of a lot more worthwhile. And I mean, almost every day, I'll be driving out to the ranch or whatever, and I'm on PCH, and you just look out in the ocean and you see these beaches and the weather, and you're like, man, I can't believe I'm living this life. I mean, it kind of catches you by surprise sometimes. Like, I can't believe 5 years ago what was my existence, and now I've been able to make my life. It's been pretty cool. So I will be the first to say that I'm a living beneficiary of the help of a lot of other people, for sure. That's kind of the short story, and I know that was long-winded, but
yeah, no.
As any story goes, there's a lot more details that get a lot more deprecating than that, both personally and professionally, where I struggled on so many levels. But I think the point is to say that if I can do it, I mean, why the hell can't you do it? Everybody can do it. And I think that's kind of that relationship with fitness that I've always attributed to your personal life. When you want something bad enough, you'll work hard enough to get it done. Any workout that's just excruciating and brutal, that's kind of a microcosm for life. What happens when life gets that way? What happens when you want to give up on your workout? What else are you going to give up on if that's the case? You know what I mean? So there's so many parallels, obviously, that you can draw between fitness and personal life and all that stuff. But for me, they've always kind of been on the forefront. It's kind of like that built-in accountability that a workout brings. Every day, a workout will always keep you accountable. It's kind of like taking your medicine. It's not going to always taste very good, but it's going to be good for you.
Yeah, definitely. I think the thing that I took out of that story, or one of the things I took out, is the phrase, like, the harder I work, the luckier I get. And it's not that,
sure,
like, you
I think
weren't.
it's a Thomas Jefferson quote. Maybe not direct, but it's very similar.
Yeah. And so, like, as you're talking about, like, that year of, like, I'm not getting paid, I'm waking up at 3, 4 a.m., whatever it is, to get your workout in. And it's like you're taking a chance on yourself. It's like none of that happens if you're not working really hard. And then the other thing I took away is people don't refer people that aren't good at what they do and that they don't like. And so by being someone that people enjoy being around and someone that actually, like, helps them, like, they're inclined to help you. So when I'm listening to that, I'm like, wow, like, yeah, a lot of things might have fallen in your lap, you're a beneficiary, but you also put in the work to create the, like, ripples in the water for that stuff to actually, like, come back and reverberate back towards you. If that makes sense.
Sure. Oh yeah. I think, in any workplace and in any field, people can tell if you care, and people can tell how invested you are. And if you're pouring your life into something, they take note of that and they appreciate that, no matter what it is. And generally it will work out if you really put your life and all of your effort and energy into something, and hopefully and ideally something that you're passionate about. It comes easier. It comes a hell of a lot easier when you enjoy it.
Yeah,
not to say that it can't be a grind. Anything can be a grind, but when you do actively enjoy it and you care, whether it's about your clients or the people you work with or your job, it will always work out in your favor.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Speaking of passions, right now, like, I would definitely think that fitness is your passion. Are there any other passions that you have, or maybe a year, 2 years, maybe 10 years down the road, you're like, I'd love to go into that? Because you talk a lot about having different eggs in different baskets, but it all still is kind of like with fitness as the nucleus? Is there anything else that you're branching into?
Yeah, in a lot of ways, fitness is the keystone of like my life. Uh, you know, if I was a full-time real estate agent, I wouldn't feel good in the office until I had my workout of the day. You know, I would still bust my ass in the gym in the morning and then get in the office. And that's still such a focus of my life and a sense of normalcy for me. But if I was to be outside of the gym, you know, and gravitate towards something else in the next decade, it probably would be real estate. Just because I've always kind of known that was part of the hardwiring in my DNA. My dad's been a broker and a realtor for 30 something years. And growing up, I saw firsthand what he did and grew to really just appreciate and admire his work-life balance. And so I think, you know, naturally that's something I've always gravitated towards. My older brother's a realtor who's, you know, kicking ass. And I've always admired other careers that I have no idea what their actual job is or what their day-to-day looks like. Cause I'm so used to what I do. And, you know, between the modeling and the training and the ranch and stuff like that, for me, it's become so consistent that it's just automatic, but I have no idea what the semblance of an office feels like in sitting down at a desk every day. And I admire people who have the stamina to sit there on a computer screen and do what they do. And they might look at, you know, trainers or,
that's what I was about to say.
fitness professionals. It's like, oh, that looks exhausting. Oh my God, they got to work. You know, it's a fully commissioned lifestyle. You don't show up for work. You don't make any money as opposed to a salary. I make no salary. I have no salary. It's 100%, you know, commission-based lifestyle, as is a realtor, which for me is like one of the attractive parts of the field that I've always identified with. But to somebody working a desk job, I mean, to me, that is way more monotonous. I know I found out early on in the startup company process that wasn't going to be my existence, but I had to go through it to realize that wasn't me. And to anybody out there that does it, mad respect, because I could not do what you do. They might look at a trainer and go, "Whoa, how's he doing all this stuff?" And for me, it just feels natural because it's what I've been doing for so long. But for people working the desk job grind, a buddy of mine's, you know, got through law school and he's just started working with a law firm. That to me speaks way more volumes about mental fortitude in a lot of ways than what I do. You know what I mean? Than any workout can speak for. But in terms of the real estate stuff, for me, I like the commission side of things. It's something that I've lived a commission-based existence for virtually my entire professional life. So it's something that I definitely relate to. And I asked my dad, 5 years ago, "Dad, when did you get your real estate license?" And he was like, "Oh, it's 26." So when I turned 26, I wanted to make damn sure that I did the same thing just to have in my back pocket. Even if I don't use it full time, it will still be a nice way to distract myself and learn something new about something that I'm definitely not good at. So the learning curve there has been significant the last few years. And even having your license, for people who do and work full time, obviously that's, most people's goal. But for me, it was just to kind of get my feet wet and get acquainted with the business and see how it works and keep up to the date with, market trends and learning how the home buying process works and investing and loans and mortgages. And I knew at some point that I would want to buy my own place, whether an apartment or a house, whether it's here or back home or wherever. And I knew that having my license in my back pocket would become invaluable. And more than that, I just wanted to learn something new, so that was kind of my lure to getting my license a few years ago. And I'm not sure what the future holds, but I would assume it will probably involve, real estate to a certain extent. Right now, I've gotten farther and farther along with being a prospective buyer and looking at the market across the West LA and more specifically Santa Monica, because that's where I want to be. And it's just so weird to think that you can work your ass off for a decade and be lucky to afford a 1,000 square foot apartment a few blocks from the beach. That's been mind blowing for me, because growing up, if you were like, in your 30s and didn't have a house, it's like, dude, what are you doing? Save up, buy a house, whatever, backyard, whole bit.
And then Nevada.
Yeah, that was kind of like the valley side of Lake Tahoe, Nevada. I just grew up in a very, suburban environment where everybody had a house and a backyard, and that was just normalcy. So moving to the city in a place like LA, it blows your mind that an apartment, 1,000 square foot apartment here is like a 4-5 bedroom house on a couple acres in virtually any city in the US. So that's been hard for me to kind of digest because it's all relative. In a place like LA, maybe things are a little bit inflated. You generally, in most careers, will make more money, but you will also always spend more money. So it does kind of balance the scales of sorts. But it's been a great learning process just to keep up to date with real estate stuff, even though I'm not actively invested in the transactional process of representing buyers and sellers. That's not by any means a primary hustle, but it is nice because even if you want to do it part-time, you can make a lot of money through the referral grapevine and connecting certain people. And there's a lot of people that operate off the referral business, so that's great. But in the event that you want to buy or sell, you can represent yourself in a transaction. Which is cool too. And it makes you a lot, obviously, smarter about the process. And you don't have to have another agent represent you because you can do that all yourself and not have to pay any of the money that entails. So I figure one way or another, I'm going to put it to use. And but in terms of, the future, man, who the heck knows? I just feel like since I've been in LA, there's that, this is such a like Southern California expression, but you can't control the waves, but you can learn to surf. And so I feel like I've just been surfing. I feel like I've been surfing the last 5 years, and it's kind of led me to where I am now, in a place I never thought I would be. And man, I'm pumped just to be able to enjoy every minute of it. Who the heck knows about the future?
Yeah, definitely. And it's stressing about it is also just, I feel like, something that would go against like your kind of just like go with the flow vibe. But the thing I would keep picking up on is like you're gonna bet on yourself, where it's like you're a trainer, you're commission based, you bet on yourself to go down to LA. So it makes sense that you would want to go into that industry where, in a way, like how hard you work controls how successful you are, whereas the opposite, where you can sit at a desk. And it's funny enough now, like so many people that sit at a desk are like in less of a position to control what they're doing, as opposed to people who are just like betting on themselves. So there's always a dichotomy and like a other side of the coin with it. And I'm kind of like you, where it's like I would rather blame myself for when things go wrong, but also be like, hey, I controlled that and was able to make that change because it was in my control. Versus like being at the mercy of the market or of a boss or of something else like that. I just got
spot on.
couple more questions with you and then we'll wrap up. So you talked about a few different things that you have as far as like eggs in the basket. You got a girlfriend, you got modeling, you got training, and obviously the realtor stuff.
Realtor,
yeah. How do you make sure that you manage them all and you make sure that you give everything the time that it deserves? Because there's only 24 hours in a day. Here in LA, maybe you got traffic. That's another thing that's getting time. So how do you make sure that everything is balanced?
Yeah, you kind of compartmentalize every hour and go, okay, so the first part of my day up until about noon is all private clients, and that can be anywhere from 5:30 in the morning to about 11. And I usually try to hash out a break around my lunch hour because I need to get my workout in. And that may sound selfish, but like, a lot of times if there's a client who wants to work out and that's the only time that I have to take a break and work out on my own, then I'll have to push that client to another day. But for the most part, I have my morning block of clients Monday through Saturday. Typically, I work just 5 days a week, but sometimes I take a client or two on Saturdays. And I try to shut it down, after just a couple on Saturday, because I've learned all about that work-life balance just a few years ago.
Yeah, but very easy to get into in fitness.
Yeah, absolutely. So I try to, really compartmentalize quality over quantity, especially with respect to working with private clients. And for every hour of the morning that I'm with that person, what I try to do to reframe the experience, as opposed to go like, man, I have like 4 more sessions today, then the ranch, another session after the ranch, and geez, it's going to be a grind. I focus on, okay, this hour that I'm with this client right now, this is the only time they're going to see me all week. So I owe them this hour, you know, and it helps to really allow you to focus on an hour by hour basis rather than the whole day. And a lot of my schedule is so malleable that, you know, a client will text me at 8:00 at night, like, hey, what do you got tomorrow? Late morning. I got a little break at work, or, you know, whatever. So a lot of I've had to really learn to be adjustable and just kind of play Tetris with my schedule. And a lot of my clients have some flexibility and they need to schedule on short notice. Other clients, they have their set days and times where that is their, you know, availability that they're paying for. And I'm going to make it happen with them. In the afternoons, I have basically the ranch, and I kind of dedicate that to just the ranch. So mornings, always the focus is kind of private clients. And then afternoons, it's always all about the ranch. And I'll occasionally take on an evening client, but I always try to shut it down just because, you know, if you're finishing work at like 7:30, and then you have 5:30 the next morning, that short turnaround starts to wear you thin over the course of a training week. I mean, I'm sure, as you know as well, but
Yeah.
So for me, it's all about, it sounds overly simplistic to say compartmentalizing, but I try to, you know, whatever hour of the day it is, I focus on that hour singularly as, you know, where I'm pouring all my energy into, and it makes the day go by a little bit faster rather than thinking about, all right, Tuesday, what do I got? Okay, I got a 7 a.m. here, 8:30 here, 10 here. I think about that hour, and it allows you not to get ahead of yourself and, you know, analysis paralysis and stress out about stuff in the future that you can't really control. You know, if there's 5 minutes more of traffic getting to your next session, so be it. You're just going to, all you can control is, you know, kind of the right now. And so that's been crucial for kind of maintaining my sanity. But because, you know, agency jobs pop up and you'll get an email or a phone call about an itinerary on, you know, you got a early call time out in Palm Desert for a shoot on Thursday. Okay, well, it's Tuesday or even sometimes Wednesday. Stuff happens on such a short notice. You go, okay, I got to contact all my clients tomorrow. I have to find a sub for somebody to fill in for me to teach classes out at the ranch. And, you know, I'm lucky to where, in general, the people I work with are pretty easygoing, and they're able to kind of move stuff around. Where if I have to take, you know, a Thursday off, I'll push some sessions into Friday or Saturday. And I have that luxury. Just, you know, as an independent contractor working freelance, you're kind of in control. You're in the driver's seat for the most part. And I've always loved that because I have a hard time with the rigidity of, you know, more of a corporate structure. And because, you know, I might have a job on Wednesday or Thursday or a Tuesday, or I might be going out of town to shoot Kohl's e-com, or, you know, you just don't know. There's so many things that you can't worry about in the future until they happen. So as soon as I find out about, you know, a job or I'm traveling somewhere, I give everybody immediate notice and just try to be as prudent as possible. And that's all you can do. You know, some people, you know, it's easy to get flustered if you're a trainer. I hate canceling on clients, but if he cancels the night before, you know, they have to be just as accommodating, just because, you know, they want to get their workout in. And if I'm not able to do it, hey, I'll find a day and time that I can do it. Or if you're not able to, I'll send you this, this, and this. And so a lot of it is just maintaining that schedule where things happen really unpredictably. And I mean, I remember my first like commercial job was with who was it? Dave and Buster's. And somebody, I think, got sick, or there was a role that wasn't filled. So last minute, I mean, I got a phone call after 8:00 at night, and I go to bed at a little after 9. So for me, it was super last minute. I had clients the next day. I was teaching classes at the ranch as usual the next day, and they called me at 8 whatever at night and said, "Hey, could you fill in for a commercial tomorrow?" I was like, I mean, maybe. What time? And they're like, "Oh, your call time's like, you know, whatever, 7 or 8 or," and I'm like, I don't know, but I'll find out for you in the next 10 minutes. And so, you know, sent a few of my clients texts immediately, got coverage at the ranch, and then I got the green light. Everybody was, you know, cool to reschedule. And then I called, you know, my agent back, was like, okay, cool, good to go for tomorrow. And that's kind of how some of life goes. And you really have to focus on that hour of that day to be in the moment. Otherwise, you're going to get lost in the sauce of, all of this schedule paralysis of stuff that might happen, or you're worrying about traffic. And it's kind of, keeping a sense of control. You can control what you can control, and that's it. If you're 5 minutes late, you'll finish 5 minutes late with the client, and you owe them that, so a lot of it's just that schedule management, and hour to hour and day to day. People are like, what do you got going on Friday? I'm like, right now? Well, I can tell you this, this, and this, but it's probably going to look a lot different when Thursday rolls around. So I think going along with almost like being easygoing in that aspect of levity, there's a parallel where being adjustable is crucial for a lot of just happiness. And people who are super rigid and have to have it done a certain way, black and white, generally struggle when they're faced with difficult situations, because it feels like it throws their whole life or their routine or their schedule out of whack. And the more you're able to kind of take it in stride, and the less you're able to kind of let it throw everything else off and stress you out, the better you're going to be. It's just, I guess, as a characteristic, being adaptable, is crucial.
Yeah.
Especially if you're an independent contractor,
Yeah. No, everything's like, it's all very present. It's all very like playful. It's all adaptable. And I feel like those are three really good traits where you can have even just one of them. It's going to help alleviate so much stress and allow you to, we've talked about this a lot on this podcast, but it's just like, be healthier, live longer. And when you're super rigid and you're super dogmatic, it makes it a lot harder to like enjoy the process and enjoy the ride.
Yeah.
It's really what it all is.
You're getting in your own way all the time,
Yeah. It's hard to ride away.
Other stuff might get in the way, but you can't get in your own way. You can't trip over your own feet.
Yeah.
So.
Very, very bad to trip on your own feet.
Yeah. By the way, I totally did that. My neighbor even saw me. I was going outside to do that workout, and I was carrying 2 medicine balls and walking down this flight of stairs. And sure enough, I totally just ate shit, tripped over my own feet, like scraped up my arm, and my neighbor saw it, and I turned around and he just laughed and I laughed. And that's kind of me in a nutshell. I'll do 1,000 burpee pull-ups or whatever, but I will probably trip also at some point over my own feet, which is time, every now and then. Okay. But it's just, you got to be able to laugh at that stuff.
Yeah. Makes for good content. And then you can just like bounce up and be like, that's the trip over feet med ball toss. 10 rounds.
Yeah. Go. Yeah. I wish I had it on video.
Yeah. That would have been so funny. Okay. So 2 more like quick hitter questions. I hit you with one of them already at the very beginning with the favorite song. But Sunday night, movie night, what's like your go-to favorite movie all time?
What's weird is, it totally depends on mood. In terms of I'll give you a couple different genres here. In terms of a mood like comedy, Dumb and Dumber is so, obviously everybody knows Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that is kind of my sense of humor, like to a T. I can't overwatch it because then it loses its luster. But man, that one is almost nostalgic for me, where I know what's coming and I'll even laugh before the thing happens,
Yeah.
So Dumb and Dumber is probably that for me. In terms of a more serious, this sounds weird, but I think I've always identified with the movie Terminator 2 was the first movie I cried. Like I literally cried. And I don't know how old I was when it came out, but I got super embarrassed because we're watching that at home, and it was one of the first rated R movies my parents let me watch. And, Arnold Schwarzenegger's being lowered into like the melted metal, essentially like disintegrating himself or self-destructing. And he's given the thumbs up to what basically had become his almost like adopted, human son. This kid who's never had like a semblance of a dad in his life, ultimately starts to really bond with this father figure who's actually a robot. And so in a lot of ways, I felt like the Terminator I realized this actually years later. And I thought about this the other day because I watched the newest Terminator movie, and it doesn't matter how good or bad the movie is, but the self-destructing Terminator will always choke me up a little bit. Even, as a little kid thinking back, I now realize it was mostly, I think, because my dad reminds me of the Terminator, kind of a rigid guy on the outside. He jokes around and has his moments, but he was always my coach growing up, and he was like almost like Sergeant Dad,
Yeah.
and almost had a robotic demeanor that wasn't unemotional, but it was just stoic. The guy never made a mistake. He was the consummate dad, husband, coach. He did everything the right way, and I just wanted so bad in every aspect of life to impress him. That was like most of my experience as a youth. I think even sports or school, or doesn't matter if getting straight A's or getting a in the park home run or whatever. It was all about kind of impressing my dad to a certain extent. There was always that component there, even to this day, probably more than I'd like to admit. But because the Terminator, I think, reminds me of my own father, that was kind of one of those scenes that really got to me as a kid. And the movie itself isn't like great. It has some decent action, but probably just because of the nostalgia, Terminator 2 is up there for me.
All right.
Which to most people is going to sound like a poor choice, but I concede that.
I think my first cry movie was My Dog Skip, and it's kind of the same thing where you like project like, oh man, I had it was a not a wiener dog, but it was like kind of the same terrier.
A
He
Dachshund
passed.
kind of, yeah.
Dotson was the dog I had at the time, but I had a beagle, and the beagle
Okay.
passed. I was like,
Oh
oh my
man.
gosh, I was just like crying in the corner. I have 3 younger siblings. I was like, they can't see me. Um, I'm fine. Like something got in my eye, but that's
Yeah.
funny.
The only thing sadder than a Terminator self-destructing or a person dying is a dog dying.
Yeah,
Like
definitely.
old yellow will get me every time. There's all these movies where
Yes.
people pass away or whatever, but as soon as the dog dies, oh man, you can
O-
bet that I'm gonna get emotional.
Old Yeller is a really good one.
Old yellow, I
So
was just thinking of that.
now that this is actually a new one, I've never asked this simply because on Sunday my girlfriend and I got a kitten. And her name's Leia, big Star Wars guy. But are you a cat or a dog guy?
So this is probably the biggest thing between my girlfriend and I, but she's a big cat person, and I'm allergic, and that's probably half the reason why I don't really identify with cats.
Right.
And I think it's ironic kind of because, I mean, they're pretty self-sufficient and low maintenance and all that stuff, but they're almost independent to a fault, like where sometimes it just feels like a cat doesn't love you the way a dog does. And
Yeah,
it's probably just the
dogs.
way that they display affection or emotion, but dogs love you no matter what, and they're unconditional and will always be loyal. But then you could keel over in your apartment and your cat is going to eat you for sure. Whereas your
Definitely
dog
true.
won't do that. Your dog will sit there and probably cry, whereas your cat's going to eat your ass.
Yeah, I've had 4 or 5 dogs growing up, and I'm definitely like, if I could have one and not have to deal with any of the work, I would be team dog. But now we're just like we're moving into an apartment. She's wanted a dog, so happy girlfriend, happy boyfriend,
Yep.
right?
Yep. Yep.
But at the same time, like I'm like playing with this kitten, and I'm like, you're really cute. Like holy shit, I was not expecting this. And
Yeah,
now
I'm
I'm like
sure I
this
could get there.
big
She has this
soppy
cat.
dad, and I'm a mess. I'm a mess.
Yeah, you're a cat dad now.
Cat daddy.
My girlfriend has this cat named Rick, and now he lives with her parents. But I think primarily because I'm allergic, but also because our apartment complex, or at least this unit, doesn't allow animals. But I think half of it comes from the fact that I'm allergic, and they would grow on me. I'm sure I'm an animal lover, so it doesn't matter. I
Animal
wanted to
lover
be a
for sure.
vet growing up
That's
most of my life until I saw how many animals they had to put down. Then I'm like, all right, that's not for me.
Oh man, yeah, that's also sad. But no, I mean, I'm definitely at some point will get a dog, but I'm just in this like cat stage and dogs, cats, animals. Um,
Yeah, it's kind of
got
the
it.
natural tier of responsibility. You got to have a girlfriend that you can take care of first, and then an animal comes into play. A cat's less maintenance, so it goes one rung lower than a dog.
I
And then after
failed
you
the
get it,
plant. I failed the plant test, so I might
yeah,
have.
the plant's in there before the girlfriend probably.
Yeah, my plant died. Anyway,
Oh, that's too
um,
bad.
Davey, thank you so much for taking the time and really just coming on and having like a lot of like really cool conversations and perspective. Like I think the big thing is like perspective, and people can take that away and just kind of like go knock over a can of water and just kind of like laugh about it.
Yeah, hey man, I appreciate the time, and the platform, it's always cool to, have some dialogue with like-minded individuals who probably can relate to a lot of what I say, maybe more than some people that might be listening. But hopefully, pretty much everybody that hears this can relate on some level or take away some aspect of positivity.
Definitely. All right, man. Take it easy. Have an awesome rest of your day.
All right, man. You too.
Before I let you go, just want to say thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. Be sure and tag Davey and I. Let us know that you're listening, and just want to hammer back home that whole point of levity and just taking it easy, having fun. If you're feeling stressed, go and do something playful. Go and make a fool of yourself. You'll find that you are less stressed. And from a mental health standpoint, especially in this coronavirus time, we're all just stuck inside. Just film some goofy videos, send them, throw them up, and just say YOLO, as what the millennials used to say back in the day. One last thing before I let you go, be sure and leave a 5-star rating and a review on iTunes, and subscribe if this podcast is your vibe. Really appreciate any 5-star ratings and reviews. Helps me grow the podcast and helps me to rank a little bit higher in this mental health, mental performance category. And other than that, you guys go have an awesome rest of your day. Take it easy. I'll catch you next time on the Down Dog Athletics Podcast.